Hey, everybody, it's Ryan. Thanks for downloading today's show. And just a reminder, as always, Wake Up War Chant is brought to you by our friends at For the Table, Madison Social, Central and Township, in the heart of College Town. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, from Tallahassee to Thomasville and from coast to Atlantic coast, it's time to Wake Up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, and it's a very happy October the 19th to you and yours. It's hard to believe it's already October 19th. Been a fast season, despite all the weird things that's gone on in it. You're currently listening to the voice of Ryan Kelly. I'm the director of digital media at warchant.com. Drew is not on the other side of the glass today, but don't let that worry you because we've got some great content headed your way today. Some recruiting talk with Michael Langston, talking about some of the guys who are going to be here this weekend for Florida State-Louisville, who Florida State is looking to impress, including a guy named James Cook, who, well, that name may be familiar to some folks. We're going to get into that in a little bit. And we're also going to talk to Ira Schoffel. Ira's got a really good piece coming out on War Chant today about Florida State's defense and how they are situationally and why haven't there been the big plays and the sacks and the turnovers. And Ira's done some digging on the numbers about where they stack to the rest of Jimbo Fisher's teams here at Florida State. And the numbers may surprise you, they may not, but they're great talking points, and it was good of him to talk with us a little bit last night. So you're going to hear from him, and of course, like I said, you're already going to hear from Michael Langston. But first of all, before we get to any of that, thanks so much for waking up with us here at 6 a.m. on 97.9 ESPN Radio, or that TuneIn radio app, or our own WTSM app. We certainly do appreciate it. However it is you're listening, and maybe that's via our podcast, which you know, iTunes, Podcast Republic, warchantradio.com, Podbean. However you do it, we thank you so much for doing so. And if you like the show, give us a 5-star review, rate us. It helps us, and of course, when you subscribe, helps us and you, because it gives you a fresh new episode right there, ready to roll every single morning. You don't got to go looking for us. You don't got to go to the search bar. Just go to your subscriptions, and we're right there. Radio@warchant.com. There's your email address. @WakeUpWarChant is the Twitter account to keep connected with us. We're doing a Renegade Express tomorrow. Let me just say this about tomorrow's show. There are some moving pieces. The itinerary is not set in stone yet. We are definitely going to do a Renegade Express. There's a thought that it might be a podcast exclusive, but we are going to do one, so make sure you're sending your questions. We're going to put up a thread on the Tribal Council as well. If you're a War Chant message board user, Gene Williams is more than likely going to be our guest for that one tomorrow. So if you have your questions for .com, make sure that you are firing them away. Really, really quickly, because a couple of Seminoles made their debut in the association last night, we do got to get you caught up on what happened in the NBA. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, this is Why You Were Sleeping.
Hello. Good morning. Wake up. Wake up. Wake me up.
Good morning. Good morning.
What happened last night?
We will start here in the Sunshine State, where it's the Orlando Magic who gets themselves a W over the rival Miami Heat in Orlando on opening night. Jonathan Isaac making his debut for the Pinstripes. He played 17 minutes. He was 2 of 3 from the floor. That's good for 4 points. Yeah, sure, only 4 points, but 8 boards in this game, 5 defensive rebounds, 3 offensive rebounds. It's also worth noting on the other end that Okara White did not end up playing any minutes for the Miami Heat. And speaking of guys making their debut in the league, why don't we talk about Dwayne Bacon, who made his debut in a Charlotte Hornets loss to Stan Van Gundy's Detroit Pistons up in Detroit. Dwayne on the night started for the Detroit Pistons. He ends up playing 20 minutes of this game. He takes 6 shots. He hits 3 of them. 2 from beyond the arc, believe it or not. That's good enough for 8 points for him. That's 2 assists and 2 boards as well for Dwayne Bacon. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a little break, and then when we come back, it's going to be Michael Langston talking about recruiting, and then it's going to be our own Ira Schoffel, who's going to talk a little bit about Florida State offensively, defensively, where their mindset at, and of course this Louisville game, which is going to be huge for both programs. And I'll even ask Ira the question, who's had it worse going on throughout these first couple weeks? Is it Louisville with the Heisman Trophy winner, or is it Florida State with the injury bug plus all that. Anyway, it's 2 seasons at a crossroads, and we're discussing them after this. It's Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Welcome back. Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio, brought to you by your friends at For the Table. Plenty of recruiting news going on, so of course, to help us break that down, it's Mr. Michael Langston, the senior recruiting analyst of warchant.com, joining us on the phone line. And Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good, man.
All right, man, so let's just ask you straight up. Of course, you knew the Miami weekend was going to be the biggest recruiting weekend of the year for FSU. Plenty of guys, but how does this Louisville weekend stack up just at face value against that?
Well, I mean, obviously, anytime you have Florida or Miami, whatever home game you have, whatever game you're playing at home, that's going to have, the biggest attraction just because you have so many in-state recruits. So it's not going to be quite as big as that, but considering it's at a noon kickoff, I think it's going to be a pretty solid weekend as far as top prospects that are going to be there. I think it's a good handful of guys that are going to be there, and certainly another big opportunity for FSU to solidify some guys as far as their commitments, and also they got some targets in hand as far as visiting. So good opportunity for them, and for them, if they can get the job done on the field, it'll have a big impact.
And especially, this is certainly a strong weekend for guys who are already committed to Florida State. Let the folks know just real quick all the current FSU commits that are going to be there on Saturday.
Well, you have Patrick Joyner. You have Patrick Joyner, a linebacker from South Florida, is going to be there. He's committed to FSU. That's a big visitor. And then also Robert Cooper's supposed to be there on an unofficial visit, and then A.J. Litton, a cornerback from over there in the D.C. area, is supposed to take an official visit. Israel Makumi is going to be there as well, a DB that's committed to FSU at safety. So, those are some of the main ones, and then and then you have some other targets. But the commits are really important because you have 2 guys in Robert Cooper and Patrick Joyner, who are both kind of shaky, as far as their commitment goes, with the uncertainty of what's going to happen with the staff and just the season in general, how it's gone, it certainly hasn't helped them. So I think those are 2 very key ones. With Robert, Odo Higgins has handled that one mostly. Georgia's been the main threat there, along with Alabama. But this is a chance for them to solidify both of those guys, both Patrick Joyner and him. I would say Joyner's probably the one that's the harder sell because of, the success Miami is going through and, how long they've been recruiting them. So I think those 2 guys are going to be my focus this weekend as far as the commitments. I want to hear, what they have to say, get a vibe for how FSU's feeling, after, this weekend, regardless of the outcome, and see, kind of where they stand from there. But those are 2 guys I'm kind of eyeing.
Other guy that fascinates you, of course, as soon as you see his name on the visitor list, it kind of hops right off the page. A guy who's not a Florida State commit, but at one time was, and that's James Cook, of course, the younger brother of Dalvin Cook, who was at one time committed to FSU, decommitted, and it seems like George is really high in that mix for him. We haven't talked about James in a while, and of course, Georgia and USC, the other one that, according to Rivals, he's really, really in their sights. The number 3 running back in the country, of course, really, really good out of Miami Central. What's the latest on James? Because I know we haven't talked about him in a bit.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting, theme because obviously committed to FSU. Everyone knows that, early on, and then, later decommitted before the even season started, because of, as we said, following your brother is not an easy thing to do, and it's you have to hear that constantly, but he's always had FSU in his heart. That's a place that he's always loved, and he really likes how, FSU always uses their backs. So he likes the rotation that Fisher likes 2 or 3 backs, and that's the one thing. I mean, you could say about the offense this year, but lately in the last 3 weeks, I mean, they certainly. You got to be impressed as far as what they've done with their running backs and how they utilize, Cam Akers and Jacques Patrick with that tandem, and then also, it seems like Amir Rasul's getting in there now, so you could have a trio of, talented guys. So I think James really likes that, and he also just feels comfortable. I mean, he's really comfortable when he's at FSU. Now, I think Georgia, holds the edge right now, and there's work to do for FSU, but I think there's still a shot, and like I said, I think his heart he loves FSU, but now he needs to see it for sure. This weekend, assuming he shows up, because we've been told before he's visiting and then he doesn't show up. But it's an official visit, so assuming that happens, I think it's going to be interesting to hear what he has to say as far as how he comes out of that visit, because there's a close relationship with Jimbo, as we all know. Jimbo is very close with Dalvin. And I think it's kind of the same thing with James. So he's very close to the family. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, what he says after the visit. But I definitely think they're certainly in the picture. They're not just like completely out. But I would give Georgia the edge right now. But it's going to be an interesting thing as far as his recruitment down the line of how it's going to work, because he's not deciding till after these visits. But certainly FSU is going to play a factor in, and this weekend could be pretty big.
So let me ask you a question here then. Let's hold everything else constant. Let's say James Cook is still a great football player. He's still got all that going on for him. He's still a star at Miami Central. He's got the same interest from all these schools, and he's not Dalvin Cook's younger brother. Is he committed to Florida State right now?
Yeah, I would say there's a good chance he is, just because of what they do and how many times he's been there. And also just his trust with Jimbo. He trusts Jimbo a lot. I mean, there's a lot of trust in that relationship. And, so I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think it wouldn't surprise me what you see FSU do is more focused on him as far as solely. We don't care who your brother is. It's all about you and what you can do here and what kind of player we can make you. And I think you'll see FSU would do a lot of that. Obviously, he's got a lot of guys that he's comfortable with that, on the team from South Florida. And, he's very comfortable with this team. But he also knows, that no matter what he does there, it's probably not going to be good enough as far as to meet, the Dalvin Cook, comparisons. But at the same time, what FSU is probably going to try to do is eliminate that factor and say, dude, you're your own man, and we're not expecting you to do that. We're expecting you to be James Cook. So I think you'll see FSU kind of sell that pitch to James and let him know that from an individual standpoint, we're looking at you as James Cook, not, oh, well, you got the same bloodlines as your brother, so, yeah, you should be just as good as him. I don't think FSU is going to approach it like that. So I think that's what you'll probably see this weekend, assuming he's there.
Another undecided skill player making an official visit this weekend, Michael, and that's Terrace Marshall Jr. out of Louisiana. Tall guy, 6'4", 186 pounds, the number 3 wide receiver in the nation, the 20th best player in the country, and the best player in the state of Louisiana. Give me your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one as well, because I think he's very intrigued by the FSU offense. I think he likes them. He likes, over history of what Jimbo does with the receivers in his offense, the different type of receivers he likes. And so I think he's intrigued by that offense. So it's even more important, this weekend to, we've seen FSU improve a lot in the last 2-3 weeks on the offense. There's more flow to the offense. Still not having that big play that you look for. So I think what you want to see is more spark from the passing game, maybe more deep shots, more stuff like that could really catch his attention. But I think he's interested, but I think there's work to do. I think this is his first visit. He's probably a long shot at this point going into the visit. But as we've seen with these visits, a lot can change as far as just one trip and, what you see and how you feel and experiencing the culture of that, whatever school you're visiting. So, and his teammates already committed to FSU in Israel. And Israel will be there. So that'll help with the comfort factor, but also just having somebody there that and that you have a relationship with. So But I think the main thing is, this is the one situation where the game itself, as far as the flow, could impact a kid if your offense, shows some explosibility and some spark. I mean, I think that's the one thing that, I've seen. You can see it getting closer and closer, but you don't see the excitement and the big plays and the big sparking big plays as far as for FSU yet. But maybe this weekend they get that, and if they do, that will help. I think as far as on the field stuff for Terrace, that will help as far as seeing a big explosion for just how much he likes them.
Another guy out of Louisiana, and here's the thing. We all know historically it's been very, very hard to get guys out of Louisiana, but with the way that LSU's been trending, even though they've won their last 2 games and they beat a decent Auburn team this last weekend, you've seen a couple LSU guys jump ship a little bit. And I'm kind of interested to see, because over the last year, you've seen Georgia kind of strengthen its hold back on that state. You're starting to see Miami become a factor again in South Florida. And by the way, Georgia and South Florida, 2 places that Florida State's been very, very successful in over the last 7 or so years, while both of those programs have been down. I'm interested to see how much those 2 programs strengthening again kind of hurts FSU in recruiting, and how the rest of the South can react to LSU if they are going to stay down for a bit, if they start to go into that state more and take some more of that talent.
Yeah, it's going to be key. I mean, I think the last 2 weeks have been, pretty positive for LSU. 2 big wins in a row. They haven't looked fantastic doing it, but they got the job done. Wins over Florida and Auburn last weekend. But you're right. The offense in general looks kind of, shaky. It's kind of the same thing we talk about as far as you don't see a lot of spark type dynamic plays, downfield, stuff like that. So, I think the more kids look at, these different places, the more you're going to see kids leave that state. But I think it all depends on a lot what LSU can show, their in-state recruits as far as, hey, this offense is just getting started. This is his first year, the offense coordinator, so we're just getting started, and the recruits believe in that stuff. Then I think you'll keep most of those guys. But if you continue to struggle and you kind of do like they did at the beginning and really, the beginning of the year where you got losses to Troy and the offense just looks completely lost, I think that's when you'll start seeing, if you see that trend continue, I think you'll see a lot more kids leaving the state, like Terrace and, they already have one, Jamar Chase, who's committed to Florida. He's out of the Louisiana area. So, it's something to monitor, but I think a lot depends on, how much the recruits believe in where that offense is going.
Michael, thanks as always, my friend. Always appreciate it.
You got it, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ira Schoffel joins us after this. It's Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Yes, Florida State just landed a 5-star commitment.
I don't see that anywhere online. How did you get that news so fast?
I'm on the new warchant.com app. I get news updates and scores pushed to my phone instantly.
How much does it cost?
It's free. Just go to iTunes or the Google Play Store, type in Warchant, and install it on your phone. That's it.
A free app that keeps me constantly up to date on Florida State sports and recruiting? Wow, that makes it incredibly easy to follow my Seminoles and never miss out.
With the app, you'll also get quick access to all the stories and features on Warchant, including the ever-popular message boards that feature thousands of fans talking about the Noles.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Moving along here, Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio. Wanted to let you know that your time is running out to get in on the action on our Bowflex giveaway right now on warchant.com. You can find that link on the front page. Of course, the Bowflex Max trainer. Big, smooth, low impact, low motion, good stuff. If you want a good cardio workout, Bowflex has you covered. And, well, you can get a Max Trainer. You can get it decked out in garnet and gold with the Seminoles word mark, with the spear, with the FSU on the side. It's all right there. Make sure you're entering in your chance to win on warchant.com. The promotion ends on Friday the 20th, so make sure that you get in on that. So as I said, welcome back to Wake Up War Chant, brought to you by your friends at For the Table. One guy that we haven't been able to hear from all week is our own Ira Schoffel, the managing editor of warchant.com. So it's good that we're able to bring him in for a nice extended little conversation here right now. And Ira, first of all, how are you?
I'm good, Ryan. How are you?
I'm fine. And second of all, let's just get straight to this. Why does this team suck in big situations so much?
You're going with a tactful approach.
Let's just hit it right on the nose, because I feel like I've been talking about this enough to where it's just kind of blunt. Like it's almost like it's as much of a given as saying hello to somebody or how are you. It's like, hey, how are you? Good to see you. Florida State's terrible situationally. Like it's just kind of become a part of the vernacular of this show.
Well, I think it's two separate things on offense and defense. And special teams, I guess, would be its own issue, and they've been better, obviously, at kicking and punting lately. But I think on defense, to me, it seems like it's just an issue of a lack of aggressiveness. It just seems like, to me, this defense is pretty passive. It doesn't seem to force the issue. Now, whether you could say that's play calling or whether that's the way the players are playing, I can't say for sure. There have been a couple instances where we felt like they were too aggressive. For example, the defense playing press man against Miami on the game-winning touchdown. But for the most part, it feels like when they played zone, especially against Miami, when they gave up some of those long passes, zone coverage. I think on the Duke play, I think there was zone coverage there as well. On the 3rd and 17, it became a 57-yard pass. It just seems like in those situations, they have not played those well. They've been pretty passive, let guys come into their zones. I mean, the benefit of playing a zone defense, one of the benefits is a lot of times the defensive backs are facing the quarterback. So they should be able to break on the ball. They should be able to either break up the pass or make the receiver pay for it. They seldom do either. And so I just think there's some tentative play in big situations on defense. On the other side of the ball, offensively, I just think I attribute almost all of it to the inexperience. Obviously a quarterback, James Blackman, and Jimbo talked about it last night on his call-in show. One of the callers asked about why doesn't James Blackman maybe take some shots downfield on some of those third and long, second and longs? Why is it always a screen or something safe? And Jimbo said, look, with a young quarterback, you don't want to drop him back in obvious passing situations and ask him to look and scan the field, because now if he gets hit, sack, fumble, game-changing play, he'd much rather take his chances with maybe a screen or a receiver screen or a tunnel screen or something like that. So, I just think he doesn't have confidence in this offense to pick up those big plays on second or third and long, which I kind of understand, especially when you consider some of the breakdowns on the offensive line and the lack of health at receiver.
I get it to an extent, Ira, but you have a piece on warchant.com right now that just came up this morning. And here's the one thing that kind of does make you raise an eyebrow. You're halfway through this season, and you know that defensively this is a team with a lot of talent. Derwin James, Tavares McFadden, Derek Nottie, Josh Sweat, Matthew Thomas. You can go down that line and you can just list elite-level blue-chip talent down the line. But overall, just like the offense, situationally, this team is not great. And defensively, when it comes to getting big stops, when it comes to getting turnovers, when it comes to getting anything that can shift momentum, Florida State's defense has not been able to deliver. And sometimes I feel like when you're expecting your defense to win you football games and they're not doing any of that, you kind of have to rethink that philosophy on offense.
Yeah, I tend to give the offense a little bit of a pass in general this season because, we knew this offense was going to be a work in progress early in the season. When you talk about replacing, 2 or 3 of your better offensive linemen, and then also replacing your, 2 or 3 veteran receivers, 3 veteran receivers, and also replacing your tailback and your fullback. So, and then you obviously lose DeAndre Francois, which is a big loss as well. So I kind of give the offense a little bit of a pass, but I don't give the defense much of a pass at all. And to your point, with the talent they have, the experience they have, you would really think this defense would be generating a lot of big plays, maybe putting that offense in positions, in much better positions. And I think that's where this team is really falling short to me. You look at, as you mentioned, the piece I wrote, in Jimbo Fisher's 8 years as head coach, this defense is generating fewer turnovers than any other team Jimbo's ever had. It's also, I think, second to last in number of sacks of any team Jimbo Fisher's had. It's just not generating big plays, and it doesn't really make sense, especially, you look at, and people can say, oh, maybe, guys are overrated or whatever. Maybe this defense isn't as good as we thought they were based on the second half of last season. But I think yesterday, ESPN's Todd McShay, one of their NFL draft guys, put out his early list, and he's got 4 of FSU's defensive players going in the first round. 4 guys, Derek Nottie, Josh Sweat, Derwin James, and Tavares McFadden. If you've got 4 first-rounders on your defense, they should be creating some big plays, and this defense really hasn't done that.
No, it just doesn't seem like the ball's been able to go their way. And I get that part of that can also be luck when it comes to turnovers as well. I get strip fumbles versus fumble recoveries can be a little different, but there have been a couple times where it seems like the ball has been just out of the fingertips of a corner or a safety or almost got to the quarterback in time. It just kind of seems like so far for the defense this year, it's been what could have been versus what actually happened versus giving up that third and however long against Duke versus bending and breaking at key moments in games. It just kind of seems like every single, I guess to use a wide receiver term, 50-50 battle, the other team seems to come down with the opportunity for Florida State's defense.
Yeah, and sometimes the statistics will kind of even out over the course of the season, and sometimes they'll you'll have a trend that's just an anomaly. It'll go that way the whole year. And to your point, I think that there's the statistic. I think what they say in an average year, if you're of the passes you deflect, you break up. Passes you break up, I think 20 to 25% of them usually are going to end up being interceptions. So for every 4 or 5 passes you break up, you might get an interception from your defense. This year, FSU's defended 22 passes, and they only have 3 interceptions. So that's a very low ratio. So to your point, they've been around the ball, but they haven't actually come through with the play. They haven't finished the play. And I think Jimbo's made the same point about the offense is he feels like there have been a bunch of plays where guys have had opportunities to punch the ball in the end zone but haven't done it, whether it was Nyquan Murray this past week where he has the ball in the open field and can't make a defender miss to get in the end zone, or Cam Akers a couple times has had long runs and just couldn't finish the play. And so that's one other thing I think when you put all these factors together, why this team isn't coming through with those big situations. It's just, again, I don't know how you quantify that, whether it's a lack of, you don't want to say a lack of effort or desire, maybe it's a lack of confidence or belief. But whatever it is, that this team has struggled a lot of times individually, guys not making enough individual efforts to come up with those plays.
What do you think it really boils down to when it comes to those efforts, Ira? Is it guys protecting themselves for the league? I mean, you said it yourself, even with the defensive struggles, still on Todd McShay's big board for these guys in the first round.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy the protecting themselves thing. I mean, I think that's possible. I certainly don't think that's the case with all of those guys. I definitely don't. I think Derwin James, you've seen him make big hits. I mean, Josh Sweat and Derek Nottie have played pretty well, I think, overall. The one guy that people question that about with Tavares McFadden, because he's kind of has a tendency not to be as physical as you want, but that's kind of come and gone. Like, I've seen him in some games where he's been very physical, setting the edge sometimes, and you've seen him and play that way, but then other times we haven't. So he's the one guy I could see people criticizing him for that. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard for it. I'm not a big fan of fans questioning players' toughness when we're not out there, but he definitely seems like he's a guy that could play more physically, and that might help the defense The otherwise, I think to me, it's just a lack of conviction, a lack of belief. You just think about the teams that play. Sometimes teams play above themselves. Again, you think of when FSU played Houston in that Peach Bowl, and everybody said, well, FSU didn't want to be there. It was Houston's Super Bowl. Well, I do think I thought FSU came into that game ready to play, but as it went on, it was clear that Houston, they believed in what they were doing. They played with effort. They played with conviction. They played above probably what they're capable of. And this team doesn't do that. It doesn't seem like these guys are, whether it's belief in each other, whether it's belief in themselves, belief in the coaching staff, maybe, the losses early this season took it out of them. I mean, you'd have to be a psychologist and sit down with every player individually and kind of get in their mind to really know. But I just think it's there's something missing with this team where they don't make those plays when they have the opportunities.
The only reason I end up asking that question, Ira, is because you mentioned it. The statistics for this team in terms of big plays, in terms of what they do, in terms of what they look like, most match up with that 2014 squad.
Yeah, in some ways it does. I mean, it's not like it's been a terrible defense. This defense, I think if you look at the national averages in terms of scoring defense, it's, top 30 or so, top 35. In terms of total defense yardage allowed, it's same thing, about top 25, 30. So it's not like this defense is just giving up everything like maybe last year's defense in the first half of the season. It's playing okay, but it's very just passive. It kind of, again, Duke's quarterback, who had really been struggling completing passes, completed a lot of passes against Florida State. Miami's quarterback played so poorly in the first half, and then when they had him on the ropes, they let him off the ropes in the second half. It's just, it seems like they don't have the ability to kind of go in for the kill. And if you think about the 2014 defense, they would start slow until they got behind, and then they would say, okay, it's time to play, and then they would kind of turn it on. This defense, but the benefit that team had was an all-time great offense, and Jameis Winston and Dalvin Cook to kind of help them get out of these holes. This team doesn't have that. That's the problem with, again, where I kind of put a lot of the blame on the defense. This team doesn't have that kind of offense, and they have to know that. And so this defense has to step up, create some short fields. This offense would really benefit from some turnovers by the defense, some big plays, field position, things like that. For the most part, this offense, the Duke game, the Miami game, and going back beyond that, a lot of times it's had to, drive 70, 80 yards with a freshman quarterback. And I really think this defense has to play to a higher level to help the offense out.
Let's switch gears a little bit, Ira, and talk about this game on Saturday, noon kick against Louisville. I'm curious to get your thoughts because Drew and I were discussing this on yesterday's show. This kind of seems like a season at a crossroads for both of these two teams in that, well, neither of them have wins that are uber impressive. They have a lot of losses that they didn't expect to take early on in this year, and this game kind of seems the last best hope to not necessarily have the season you thought you were going to have, but have a somewhat respectable campaign. You've got to start it with this win if you're Florida State or Louisville.
Yeah, I think, oddly enough, I kind of feel like Louisville's season's in worse shape than Florida State, even though Louisville's got a little bit better record. I feel like I don't know if Louisville's really has many opportunities to kind of salvage this season. They may get some wins, but this is really their last big game other than the rivalry game against Kentucky. For Florida State, they still have some big games left on the schedule. They could kind of help salvage the season. So if you beat Louisville, if you win at Clemson, you beat your rival Florida. I mean, there's at least some opportunities to kind of, even though your overall record won't be great, I don't think you can mail in the season. But as far as this particular game goes, I mean, it is enormous for both teams because for Louisville, I think clearly it would prove last year's win was not a fluke, even if the score was maybe a fluke. I don't think Louisville was 40 points better than Florida State. At least it would show that the game overall wasn't a fluke, and that they're right now that they've got Florida State's number, so it's a big game for them. On the other side, for Florida State, it's a huge game because of implications beyond this game. I know a lot of people want to make a lot about the revenge factor or the fact that hey, that team embarrassed you last year, and certainly that's a part of it. But I honestly think this is a huge game for Florida State just in terms of the season, because if you lose this game and you fall to 2-4, now you really start having to worry about bowl eligibility. You really start having to wonder if this team is going to finish above 500, have a winning record. There's a lot of things in terms of Florida State's history and legacy of success in football that would be on the line if you lose this game. Because I just think, there's a couple, you can't predict that they're going to win at Clemson. I mean, I think they're going to be a long shot there, obviously. And they've got some other challenging games. I mean, certainly Syracuse, Boston College look a lot tougher now, even going on the road to Florida. So I just think this is a huge game for FSU, not because of what happened last year, but just they need this win to really kind of boost their bowl hopes.
Overall, I'm fascinated in seeing this. You mentioned it. That's a defense that doesn't make a lot of plays versus an offense that has the ultimate playmaker in Lamar Jackson. And there certainly is something's got to give factor there, but I also look to that other end where Louisville's defense is a sieve. They have nice linebackers, and that's about it. I mean, you saw what Boston College was able to do. Boston freaking College in the second half of that game on Saturday. You mix that with an offense that you wrote a little bit earlier in the week, Ira, feels like they're still in the rhythm with things, feels like they're still on top of things despite not always punching it in the end zone. So I'm anxious to see, above all else, if you're not going to get it right this game, what game are you going to get it right in?
Oh, man, there's no doubt. I mean, this is a game where I'm sure Louisville's defense will play better than it did against Boston College. I'm sure they're going to be very fired up and motivated for this game in a way that they weren't on a Friday night at Boston College. But at the same time, it's been a bad defense all year. They're not good at stopping the run or the pass, really. And really, everybody. I mean, if Gene has a story up on the site, his matchup analysis really does a good job of breaking down how bad their defense has been. So Florida State's offense has to come through. And I'm not going to put a number that, they've got to score 35 points or they've got to do this, but they have to be effective. They have to be able to put together sustained drives. They have to put together some big plays. This can't be a game. You can't have more than, 1 3 and out. You just can't get the ball, run 3 plays, and give it back to Lamar Jackson. I just think that's where you get into a huge trouble. And then if you fall behind by a couple scores with a freshman quarterback and a freshman tailback and Cam Akers who's in there a lot, you could just be really putting your offense in a really tough situation. So, I don't pretend to say that FSU's defense is going to limit Louisville's offense a great deal. That's why this offense has to they have to come through. There has been signs of progress. I think James Blackman's been playing better and better. The running game really has come along, and they can't have the penalties. They can't have the miscues. They've got to put together a lot of scoring drives and hit some big plays.
Ira, I'm interested. I know what you said in the War Chant report. I know that's not out yet, but if you had to guess this game right now, where is your head at? Where do you see this game shaking out?
I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be pretty high scoring. I think they're both offenses are, going to do what you expect. I think they're both going to move the ball well and score a lot of points. I don't think FSU's defense is going to solve Lamar Jackson. I think, if you look, he gets his against everybody they play. The guy has over 3,000 yards already this season. And I think FSU's offense will have some success too. So I think it'll be back and forth. But at the end of the day, I just don't know if I think FSU's offense can be consistent enough to match scores. Right now I'd pick Louisville in a close game, but I have more confidence in Lamar Jackson and against FSU's defense than I do FSU's offense really against anybody right now, just because of the youth and kind of the lack of ability to finish off drives.
And I think it's so funny that literally you could sit here and you could make the exact same counter argument about Louisville's defense. That's literally almost the bizarro world season that both of these two teams have had.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I'm not. This is my saying FSU's offense probably won't be able to keep pace isn't a reflection that I think Louisville's defense is going to get a lot of stops. I just think that this offense, in terms of executing plays and making up for negative plays. Because if you look at when this offense really struggles or it fails to score, we saw it in the Duke game. We've seen it times before. If they get one holding call, that pretty much kills the drive. If they get one loss of 4 yards on a run or a sack, that pretty much kills the drive. Jimbo gets very conservative with his freshman quarterback, and they really struggle to move the ball after a negative play. I just think that's going to happen. Even if Louisville doesn't do anything, there's going to be either a delay a game or a false start or a hold that's going to set them back, and then you're punting. And I just think, if you punt more than a few times against Louisville, I think you're probably going to have a hard time winning because, they don't punt too often with that quarterback.
Fair enough, my friend. Ira, thanks as always for joining us.
Thanks, Ryan. Take care.
All right, we're putting a bow on this thing after this. It's Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. The weekend is so close you can taste it, ladies and gentlemen, and, well, that taste might be that of a beverage, and, well, if that's your case, well, then fret not, because our friends over at For the Table have you covered. Madison Social Central Township, they all give you the best happy hour in Tallahassee from 4 to 7 every day. It's the same great deal at 3 completely different and wonderfully unique locations. Make sure you're heading over to one of those 3 places and having yourself a good time tonight. By the way, a couple things before we go. I know I mentioned at the top of the show that Okara White did not play for the Miami Heat last night in their loss to the Orlando Magic, and I know why. And that is actually because he is nursing a shoulder sprain, which he suffered in the preseason. So he's going to be out for what seems to be a limited amount of times. He was actually listed as questionable for the game before that time, if you want to know just how soon they expect him to be back out there. So, of course, heal up. Just don't win too much, because I'm hoping that Orlando can maybe swing themselves an 8 seed. I'd like to actually watch playoff basketball, even if the Magic are just going to be a sacrifice to whoever the 1 or the 2 seed is. I think that'd be fun. But, of course, I think both Florida teams are going to be decent this year. Finally, before we go, I've only got a minute left, but this story is too dang good. In Long Island, California, a restaurant owner, according to the San Francisco Gate, is trying to pull themselves out of a quote-unquote PR nightmare because a Yelp reviewer went to this place for brunch and, well, he ordered the chicken and waffles. It's $13, but he found out that the chicken and waffles that they quote-unquote proudly serve is Popeye's chicken. It wasn't their own chicken. It wasn't something they made on their own. They bought Popeye's and they put it on their chicken and waffles. Can you believe that? You can get that for much cheaper and make the waffle. I mean, heck, go get an Eggo. Put some Popeyes on it. And you got yourself covered. Could you even imagine? What if a fancy restaurant had a burger menu that proudly served Big Macs? Imagine that. The absolute gall that somebody has to say, well, we proudly serve Popeyes. Well, don't just serve your own chicken. You're a friggin' restaurant, aren't you? It's not like you got it and then breaded it and fried it. No, it was ready to go. They literally bring it in from a Popeyes in town. It's not like they had some agreement with them. Good grief. We got plenty of good show for you tomorrow, so stick tuned for that. Mike and Mike's up next on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.